Hi folks, this is Bill Van Riper with Bug Out Bungalows, and I feel compelled to do this talk on about preparedness for the little prepared, or people that aren't familiar with preparedness, or people with not much in the way of resources. And so the first thing about my channel, the off-grid refers to, I like it out in the boonies, whether it be the desert or the woods, near the ocean, whatever. It's not a survivalist or preparedness-oriented channel whatsoever. I grew up in the 70s reading Mother Earth News and those sorts of things, and so that's what this channel's basically about, and to promote my building, the Bug Out Bungalows. But that's not what this talk is about. I'm about to turn 62, and I've been living off-grid or out in the boonies since I was a kid. I'm a contractor. I did residential construction and remodel and some commercial work and did concrete tilt-ups. Plus, I've always been interested in alternative construction and built various cabins and those sorts of things ever since I was a kid. I've lived out in the boonies, you know, a few different places I had, a couple miles off pavement, that sort of thing. And due to the vicissitudes of life and maybe divine discipline, I've had occasion to be very lean on resources, or in fact broke. And it's given me an opportunity to live off and experience some of the things that we may be going through now. I mean, live off some of my supplies. I basically got somewhat serious about preparedness for Y2K. And I'm glad I did, because what happened was, that wasn't a major thing, but being in construction and going through different recessions and you know, whatever else may happen throughout life, I had occasion to be dependent upon those foods and whatnot. And even if I could have survived without them, they made life easier. And so I've learned a lot. And it's happened on more than one occasion that I've experienced that. Most recently, after this the recession of 2008 and 9, and I was in construction and basically went belly up and ended up with a lot I have up in Humboldt County. And I basically lived down there in a couple of my bug out bungalows and kind of dug in and was stubborn and half starved to death. But it was, you know, the second or third time, but probably the most extreme time when I've had to rely on, you know, my supplies and stuff like that I had already accumulated. And so I have some stuff to add that isn't, or maybe some insight that might be a little different than people that haven't actually, you know, lived that type of lifestyle, where they're dependent on, you know, being not so dependent on the grid, let's say. So, because what's happening is you may not leave the grid may be leaving you. So here in California, they were shutting off the electricity on hot, windy days, and I'm sure they're going to continue to do that. For us, we got to basically expect a big earthquake at any time that could interrupt services. So fortunately, even without this current situation, people are understanding the importance of a certain amount of preparedness, which people always did in the past, probably for hundreds or thousands of years, whatever it may be, that, you know, stuff happens. And you can't always rely on the government to bail you out, as we've seen time and again. So that's what this talk's about. That's kind of an introduction of where I'm coming from and whatnot. So getting on to food, which is probably the first concern, is one of the things I'll talk about. Ideally, you got your rice and beans. You know, that was a given, and now, even if you didn't realize it initially, that you should have a bunch of toilet paper. And living out in the business like I have, and usually if I go out to one of the places, I don't like to leave again, at least for a while. Running out of toilet paper, and in my case, coffee, is going to make me go into town. And if I run out of coffee, it could get real ugly. So weeks ago, I went stocked up on a bunch of crappy coffee. You know, made sure I had enough to hopefully get me through a couple of months of coffee at least. And the same with the toilet paper. And that includes paper towels. Those do fine. Used to be newspapers were good, but you don't see many newspapers now. But if you do come across one and need it, the trick is to crumble it up, crumble it up, crumble it up, and it'll soften up, and it is a pretty good substitute. I think that covers that. So I want to talk about food. Again, back to the rice and beans. What happens is you can get what's called appetite fatigue, and it can get very hard to eat those same foods again and again. And so you got to find ways to vary the diet. And there's also things called comfort foods. So in my own case, having lived off grid and being from my culture or whatever, I can live off toast and butter. I eat a lot of toast and butter. And so, yeah, you got your rice and beans, but I got to have flour. So if you're going to have flour, you basically, to make good stuff with flour, the basic things you need: flour, some oil, like cooking oil, ideally some sugar, and a little salt, and a yeast or baking powder. And you can make like pancakes with it, or I guess more or less tortillas. You can make biscuits, dumplings, those sorts of things, and it's breaking monotony. But more importantly, you can make something sweet like a pastry of some type, along with some other things I'd recommend. So, which would be, you want to have some sweet stuff too. Just rice and beans gets old. You're probably stocked up on fruit bars and snack bars and all those kind of things. Thing is, those will go quick. I mean, one a day or something. But once you get hungry and you're tired of eating this and that, and it's real easy to eat. What happens is you'll eat up the good stuff first. Or at least I tended to, because you're hoping things are going to improve. And partly, oh shit, I don't care. I'm going to eat another candy bar or something, or a fruit bar, and it's just the way it goes. So the trick is to have something you have a lot of, and you got to go through a little hassle to do it. And that's why having flour and sugar and those kind of things, where you got to actually cook it, a minimum like a pancake or some type of biscuit, depending on how you're going to go about cooking it. And you can make like a dessert very easily. So I guess that brings me to having like cinnamon and other spices. So we'll talk about spices. So you got your rice and beans and whatever, noodles and those sorts of things. You're gonna have to flavor them, and I wouldn't get exotic. I mean, again, if you're on a limited budget. So my main go-to one is chili. I'm in California, and I could eat Mexican food all day long. So I got to have chili in the house, and I need oregano, and of course I need to have cinnamon. And there's others I like. I recommend, dried onion and garlic and onion salts, and there's other ones you might like, but I need those. So the cinnamon, you throw a little cinnamon and some sugar in whatever doughy concoction you make, and however you cook it, and you have it with a hot cup of coffee or tea in the morning. Because remember, you're stuck, in this case, you might be stuck in the house all the time. And it's just one of those things that makes it easier to face the day. Or sometimes and you can make up a few and eat them later in the day. And even if they get kind of hard and stale, they still got a little sugar and a taste in them. And they're an uplift from the bland monotony of whatever you might be going through. And it's relatively cheap and easy to do and have on hand. And also you can bread stuff with the flour. I mean, so besides the rice and beans, I highly recommend some flour. And so also oil, stock up on cheap vegetable oil. So you have it for cooking and whatnot, and get some good oil, however healthy oil that you like to eat for like on salads and whatnot. Another thing you should stock up on, or is a good one, a sack of potatoes. Personally, okay, so I'm going to tell some personal stories of in the past. When I was a kid, me and my girlfriend lived down on some property I bought when I was like 19, out in the boonies somewhere, and it was not an ideal situation, but we lived on, basically the main go-to food was Krusty's pancake mix. And so I don't recommend that. It just wasn't real healthy, and it's a good. It tastes kind of good, and it was easy to do, easy to make, and everything. But for long-term health, wasn't good. So for what works for me, if I have no other food I got to live on, it's potatoes. Maybe it's my genetics or whatever. I'm Dutch descent. It's not beans or rice, which I love, but if one go-to food I need are potatoes. Again, to really get the best out of potatoes, you need that oil, that vegetable oil, to cook them, or if you're making mashed potatoes, whatever, you need that oil again. And it doesn't have to be super high quality coconut oil or anything. Just cheap oil, vegetable oil, corn oil probably is good, or whatever. I'm a little iffy on the soy oil, but in this situation, emergency situation, it's not really going to matter. So the other thing is, so you want to get the sugar in bulk. Again, sugar's not healthy. I try to avoid it, but there's a survival situation where you might need basic calories. Or also, you can boil rice and make it like cereal. And if you're almost starving, putting a teaspoon of sugar or two on it, there's no harm in it. Salt is good for various things, but also if you run out of salt, and it's an easy thing to forget to stock up on, that bland food's that much more blander. So, and you can use it for preserving stuff, and you can get big bags of it pretty cheap. So salt's another thing I think you should get. And then back to the potatoes. The potatoes keep a long time. So just get a big bag of starchy potatoes, put them in a cool, dark place, and they'll last surprisingly long, depending on the climate and whatnot. As well, carrots. So carrots, and they're usually economical, and you can get them in bulk, and I recommend doing that. Onions are another one, and they're good food for flavoring stuff. So there's all kinds of other stuff, but I'm just saying what I've lived with and experienced, and over the time I found have worked for me. Personally, the other thing that lasts a long time, you might not have refrigeration, so I'm coming through from a point of view. If you got refrigeration, and especially you got money, just stock the heck up out of it and hope the electricity doesn't go off. But what keeps without refrigeration, and it's good healthy food, and also good bang for your buck. So cheese, you should get a big block of reasonably priced cheese, and sometimes it gets a little mold on it, and you scrape it off or whatever. And the cheese, again, you can eat it, just slices of cheese, or mix it in with other foods and stuff to flavor those bland foods, other bland foods. The eggs. Okay, so the other one, I've never had much experience with powder eggs. I would plan at some point to stock up on that, but just fresh eggs. My experience has been with like fresh eggs and cheese. If you put them in a cool place where it's reasonably dark, it's not the middle of summer and this and that, but it'll last, sometimes weeks, a couple weeks, maybe more, maybe less. But I'm just saying, if you don't, cheese and eggs are a good one. Butter's another good one. It doesn't tend to go bad that quick. I mean, yeah, they'll tell you, oh, don't let this and that get warm or for more than 40 degrees for so long or whatever. I mean, I can't argue with that, which that covers some of the food stuff. You need to get spices for these rice and beans and noodles and whatever else you get. The problem with a lot of canned foods, the money spent on canned foods, I'd recommend you buy like meat stuff or stuff that you could mix in with other foods to give them flavor and texture and more taste if you're on a budget. If you start crunching numbers per meal, per dollar and stuff like that, straight, if you're eating a can of canned foods, $2 or $3 for stuff with any meat in it and on up. Even a can of tuna's, $2 or $3, right? So, okay, that's one meal. So pretty soon, if you're thinking 3 meals a day or $2 or $3 each times, so let's say you're $6 a day times 30 in a month, that's $180. And let's say you only got $100 now. You're going, I don't have this, but I'm willing to spend $100 to stock up. You thinking you're going to spend that $100 strictly on canned food, because that $100 of canned food isn't going to last you that long. Give you basic calories. You want something that's going to, give you some basic calories that fill your stomach, and then throughout the course of time, you would augment it with, let's say, a higher cost food or higher protein or something like that. So that's what I'm trying to steer people to in this talk is the stuff that I actually get used and you're going to depend on. So I think that kind of covers the food. Is being so it'd be nice to have the money. Okay, if you had the money to buy unlimited amounts of top end freeze dried, name brand food, packeted food by the pallet or something, that would be great. But it just it just costs so much money. A packet of those meals, I think, last time I checked into them, ranged from, it seemed like $6 to $10 for a complete meal that you just add water to. And it's, good quality. And if you can afford it, I highly recommend it. If you do buy them, I think, I would buy some, especially if you do have to move. Let's say, if it comes down to where people have to basically leave the cities, yeah, having a trunk full of that would be ideal. But still, versus, a trunk full of rice and beans and some other stuff, when you think of the calorie density and whatnot, how many calories of people you're going to feed, you still might be better off with some of those cheaper foods that, are more bland and take more to prepare. So I think that's all I want to say about the food. The next thing is health in general and dealing with my event might be taking place. All I can say is you want to keep your immune system up. So once you're sick and how you deal with it, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that are doing various, have good information on that. Do your own research. But for me, what tends to keep me healthy, or what I do when I tend to get sick, is vitamin C. And in fact, it'd be good to start doing a lot of vitamin C now. It's certainly not going to hurt you. How prophylactic it is on preventing disease, that's debatable. Personally, whenever I've started to feel sick or whatever, that's one of my go-to things. Another one, I don't know if it's good for you. I like echinacea and golden seal extract. Basically, I haven't gotten sick or the flu. I don't know, I've lost track, decades. But I'll get run down, and I've gotten sniffle a few times. I'll go to echinacea and golden seal extract and use that, however they recommend or whatever. And that seems to be real helpful. And then other thing, if you're into juicing, or you should get into juicing carrots and beets and those kind of things, real good for keeping your immune system up. So the best advice. And then if you can cut back on your vices and actually, negative thinking in general. And the best preparedness, ultimately you can do is, get right with your spirituality or balance with whatever, leaning you take, whatever journey you're on, but, resolve that. Otherwise, you're going to live in fear, and that's going to make you sick. So part of your health is going to be not living in fear and maintaining a positive attitude. So again, it's about boosting your immune system. And if you're not familiar with that, start getting familiar with it. I'm not going to, different things seem to work for different people. So another thing, an interruption of service. Back when I was a kid, we had, let's say the electricity goes out and lighting and whatnot. Well, with the LED lighting and flashlights, they're so great. You can get rechargeable flashlights. So do that. When I was a kid, we had those Coleman lanterns you got to pump up. I guess they're still around, but those were just nasty and dangerous. In the summer, they were hot. And the LED technology and the inverter technology has come such a long ways that there's no comparison. So again, along those lines, you should get at least an 800 watt inverter to run. It probably won't. Well, it won't run your refrigerator unless you got a real small one, maybe. But it'll run your TV. What you'll want to do, it'll be able to charge stuff. A fan. If it's during the summer and it's hot, just a simple fan makes a world of difference. It makes so you can sleep at night or whatnot. So the thing about that inverter, I bought a few of them basically from Harbor Freight or whatever for like $40, and I've had really good luck with them. It doesn't mean they don't burn out over time, and I bought some of the other stuff, been happy with it. But I'm paying for top quality stuff, and I've been a lot of the stuff, it'll last 2 or 3 years or something like that. Which, hey, if we're dealing with a crisis or something, it's well worth it. Or I don't mind buying some of the lower end stuff, like from Harbor Freight, like inverters and generators and stuff. Because if I'm leaving them out in a cabin where I'm not there all the time, if they get stolen, it's a lot less of a hit than having really nice high-end Honda type stuff, and it's less of an attraction to do that. So I recommend getting an inverter that you can, if nothing else, clip on your car battery, and then you run an extension cord and at least have lights in your house. It's not an ideal situation because you have the potential of running the car battery down. You got to be very aware of that. But if you only need hour light, just basic light for an hour or two, run an extension cord and then get an LED light bulb, put in a trouble light or something similar. You'll have at least light in your house. It's better to run it through the inverter for a variety of reasons. You can also plug your TV in at that point. You don't want to run it continuously without charging that battery, which would get me to the next point. Ideally, you have a deep cycle storage battery like you'd use on your boat or something, and a battery charger, and keep that battery charged at all times in case the power does go out. At least you have a day or two to run stuff off your inverter. That might finish it on talking about that. If you got pets, you got to control them, keep them fenced in. If your pet, let's say your pet gets out, it might become food. I mean, think about that. You think in this day and age there aren't people who would hesitate to eat your Fluffy or Spike? No problem. It might be your neighbors. So you need to have food for your animals. What'll happen is they'll get loose or run in feral packs, and people will just shoot them. People aren't going to have tolerate, especially if you have intimidating dogs. It's not going to take much provocation. So ultimately, if you don't have any pets, I wouldn't get any right now. Maybe a dog, for protection or something. But then you got to feed it and everything else. And if you're locked in your house, I've also heard it could be that they're saying, oh, the pets are carrying something. And I think in China, they destroyed a lot of pets. So I know pets are part of the family, but get plenty of food, get plenty of crappy food. If I know people spoil their pets but if you've got limited funds, you're better off giving some name brand box store, cheap as they got, food for a few weeks or a few months than not having enough resources or money or access to this high-end food it's already used to. So I would suggest now you get some, if you got a pet and you don't have a lot of resources, go buy some crappy food for your pet right now, but a lot of it. And hopefully you won't even have to feed it to them. Just save it for a rainy day, or give it to the okay, after this crisis, whatever crisis, there'll always be another one. You can donate that food to an animal shelter or something. It won't go to waste, especially any food you stock up on. Again, the main thing is control your pet, especially if you have intimidating dogs. I don't think people will be tolerating it. And then that would bring me to there's a chance of people flipping out. You can almost expect it, especially down in the cities and stuff. And also people getting desperate. And that's and the most important thing to take away from my talk right now is you don't want to be desperate. You don't want to be desperate for your family. So you want at least some calories in the house. And you want water. So before I go on to my next thing, I do want to talk about water. Okay, you went out and bought all the water off the shelves and whatnot. That's not enough water. And you can't use your drinking water for flushing toilets and whatnot. There could be an interruption of water service. One, if you're on a well or something, electricity, or, it could be minimized, the excess water. Two, okay, we chlorinate our water, thank God. if the delivery systems get shut down where they can't, let's say, get chlorine to the water treatment plants, or it becomes limited, or they got to, ration it, water might become limited. And it's not going to be practical to fill these, pint plastic disposable bottles to collect water. And then water tanks, which is what I'm steering towards, some way it's bulk storage of water, can be kind of expensive. So what I recommend you do is, if you've been preparing, if you already know this stuff, I'm not talking about you. I mean, I've lived off grid plenty, and in my place, I just moved my 2,800 gallon water tank up to Nevada. But if you have limited resources, you want to get based on Craigslist or other points of access, and you can get used plastic barrels that had fruit juice or some type of concentrate or whatever. It might be vegetable oil or whatever in it, very cheaply off Craigslist. And those, so they come in basic two sizes of 55-gallon size and 30-gallon size, and actually 15s. The 50-gallon sizes are nice if you don't have to move them. So you put them in one spot and fill them, and what I recommend. So right now, if you're in a position where you can do this, it would be wise to get some 55-gallon plastic drums, wash them out, disinfect them as needed, and then fill them now, or wait till there's notice, okay, it looks like it's hitting the fan, and they're going to limit your water supply. At that point, you want to fill them. Now you're filling with clean, chlorinated water, and it's from a good source, a safe source. Hopefully you'll never have to drink it, but you may have to use it to wash with, to flush toilet, and you got your bottled drinking water to drink. And if you don't, then you got water to drink. As far as, so that's a 55-gallon drum. The problem is if you got to move it, so it might be that you got to move water from one place to another. Those work, but you have to siphon the water back and forth if you use the 55-gallon drums. They can be moved, but it's a hassle. The 30-gallon drums, so a 55-gallon drum weighs around 400 pounds or more, depending on how full it is. A 30-gallon drum, so now you're looking at 240 pounds plus, a little over. And they'll have handles on it a lot of times on the top. You can kind of manhandle those, and you roll it off a truck over your knee, that sort of thing, drag them around. So a 30-gallon, if you're going to have to move your water from place to place, is a real convenient size. They make a 15. I don't see much advantage of that. And then if nothing else, go to Walmart or whatever and buy one of those 5-gallon or a couple 5-gallon plastic jugs, square plastic jugs for water. I would say would be a minimum, and get those full and have those on hand, plus your bottled drink water. That's fine. I don't bother to do that for the most part, except for having the convenience of it in the fridge or for work in the truck. I drink tap water. I'm up in the mountains. We got good tap water, thank God, chlorine and all. If we never, have a problem with chlorine, you can filter it out, and it makes for a civilized, safe water system. So I'm not too anti-chlorine. Fluoride's another story. About water. So if the water gets interrupted, they'll probably also have trucks that doing water delivery systems at centralized locations. So that's why you'd want to have jugs that are pretty easy to move around. So another problem, they cut out the water. How are you going to flush the toilet? Well, maybe for a day or two you don't have to. But that becomes a problem. You're not going to use your bottled drinking water to do that. And it is an issue. So think, I can fill the tank and then flush it. Well, you don't need to fill the tank. The best way to flush the toilet, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, but a lot of people actually don't. And you should test this and find out how much your toilet needs to do this. But if you just take some toilet paper, wad it up, throw it in your toilet, and then get one of your big, your spaghetti pot, a big, a couple quarts at least, like a gallon or something. fill it up, and dump it right in the bowl, not in the tank, and it should flush the toilet. And then, depending on how old your toilet is and how it's designed and whatnot, how much water it'll take. It might take 2 gallons. It might take 1, and depends if you've let it sit for a while. And along those lines, I've been through the water shortage before in California, so for droughts. And so at one time that is saying, if it's brown, flush it down. If it's yellow, let it mellow, which is pretty stupid, but it's sort of the same concept if you don't have water. So hopefully you can let someone use it, go to stool, as they say, a couple times before you flush it. But you might want to do it, depending on your water situation, every time. But definitely if you're just peeing, let it sit and flush it. But you do need you got to get rid of that kind of that kind of mess for sure. And the other way I'd recommend is, and this will get me to okay. So the next thing, you want a couple 5-gallon buckets, like from the one of the box stores or whatever, old paint tins, or not tins, plastics, 5-gallon plastic buckets. One of them, if you have to use that for your toilet. And so the simplest thing to do is use that as neat. Okay, so I don't want to get sidetracked, and I might have some other talks about sewage in general if I end up doing more talks. But what I want to say is using a bucket is the most convenient way to get rid of the human waste. And so what I do is I'll go out and wherever I'm at and get a shovel full of dirt and put it in the bucket. And then that'll be in the house in the evening, let's say, especially if I got to use it at night. And then I, use it in the morning as needed. And then at some point go out and bury a quick hole, dump the whole thing and bury it. And that's the most, one of the most sanitary and convenient ways I found of getting rid of human waste. The idea in part came from, it's natural to do the bucket, but throwing dirt in it. And I got the idea from someone who told me about getting the bucket and putting a plastic liner in it and putting cat litter in it. Let's say you're in the city and you're in your car and you're living in your car and you got to use a bathroom. And this might be a tip to someone. So you get a plastic, you get your pail and you put a liner in it and you put cat litter in it. And then you can theoretically throw it in the dumpster. I'm not recommending that. It's probably illegal. But if we're talking an emergency situation, that's a lot better than going in the street or the gutter. I think you'll agree. And so I adopted that idea. Instead of just simply having a piss bucket, we're all familiar with that, especially if you're using it for more than just urinating in, to put some dirt in it. And the thing about the dirt, besides it's right there, as opposed to kitty litter or something like that, it gives ballast, it weights the thing so it's less likely to tip over. And then when you do dump it, it helps keep it clean. And then you can throw some more dirt in, switch around you want, whatever you need. Put some more dirt in it and bury the small hole you've made. And I found that was the most consistently good way to get rid of that sort of thing. Another option is digging an outhouse, and I don't care for those, and I'll do a talk, I think, on sanitation and that sort of thing in general, separately of this thing. So the next thing I guess I wanted to talk about is people flipping out. Again, people are going to probably flip out, and then you're going to have desperate people. And again, I think I started mentioning, got sidetracked on not getting desperate. You don't want to be one of the desperate people. And that's why having things that lift your spirit, like, maybe coffee or some, something sweet or something, baked or something like that is an important thing. But some people are going to flip out. Some people are already flipping out. And in particular in the city, that's going to get worse. And they're not going to have their medications and this and that. And a lot of people are going to be vulnerable. And one of the things I'm concerned about is, single moms and single moms with children and that sort of thing. So along with the flipping out and going crazy, people getting desperate, you're also going to have, maybe dumb kids that are going to be trying to steal stuff or whatever out of desperation or wanting to feed their families or whatever else. So I'm not a big gun guy, but I would recommend you have some type of firearm in your home. And if, I don't want to be sexist or anything, but if you're a single woman with a couple kids or something, you're probably not going to be very intimidating to a lot of people, particularly, younger males or something like that. You're rather vulnerable. And so though you may never want to shoot someone in your life, if you have a gun, it gives you an option. And so I'm going to go a little bit on defense because I read the story or narration of a guy that was in Argentina when it collapsed. I believe he was a doctor, I'm not sure. But they were in a similar situation. And basically, okay, here's what it is. People being desperate. Bottom line, whatever makes them desperate doesn't matter, but people being desperate. So he said, it's one thing to be looking for roving gangs or whatever, or the crack addict, whatever. But he said what would happen is you're out to your car to bring your groceries in. There'd be some guy, kids would be playing over here on their bikes, and some guy walking down the street in a business suit, and he'd walk up to you and he'd be the guy that robbed you, because these desperate people now, they could be, PhDs, they could be, hey, I'm going to take care of, and it could bring out the worst in people. So potentially it's your neighbors, it's people you wouldn't expect became a hazard. So the second thing, along with getting the groceries out of the car, it's not practical to pack around a shotgun. People say, I'll get a shotgun for home defense. Great. But if you're in a residential neighborhood and, you're taking your kids to school and your spidey senses are tingling or something, you can't be packing a shotgun. You're going to look like the threat then. So that's when you're going to have a handgun. So so there's people that are experts on this stuff and they know that. I'm not saying I know, I'm just giving you some secondhand insight on why a shotgun or a rifle isn't necessarily the best thing to have. If you're a single mom, you need something you can handle, something that you can hopefully just scare someone off with or make noise with. You're not going to turn into Annie Oakley, and that's not the idea. It's at least another, make a shot or two in the air. I mean, a lot of these people might not be bad people per se, more like desperate people. So I would recommend a pistol. And if you're not familiar with a pistol or firearms in general, actually, there's probably someone in your family that's, a gun nut, the uncle with the NRA stick or whatever, that'd be more than happy to help you. And if it's an immediate thing, and that's what I'm trying to throw some stuff out there, it's too late to do the long-term planning. I'm trying to give you some stuff that you can do in the next day or two, hopefully, or week, as far as stocking some stuff up. You're probably already stocked up on some stuff, so I'm trying to throw up some other stuff that, from my experience, are important. Although I haven't had to deal with too bad a situation. Although living in Southern California as a kid during the Watts riots, I became very conscious of, the threat to our family. And, a side note, my dad had died and my brother's in the Marines and came home and got my mom a shotgun and sawed it off. But in retrospect, maybe a pistol would have been better. Fortunately, thank God, nothing ever came of it. So I've been conscious of this. And again, I'm not a gun nut per se, but I believe in people being able to defend themselves. And I think that's the best option, especially for, single women or something. And you got to be responsible, of course. It's your responsibility the kids don't get a hold of it, etc. And you might have to teach your kids how to shoot and how to handle a gun. It could come to that. So if you're a single woman and I don't like guns or something like that, again, I'm not trying to be sexist per se, but you got to look at it as a tool, and it's a tool to protect your family. So I think that ends what I want to talk about immediately. I felt kind of compelled to give a few ideas and some insight on basic prepping. And at some point I may give some other, I had planned to do some talks on various subjects. But if anyone likes this and want to hear me talk about some other subjects, because I could do subjects that more specific on, getting water all the way to, putting in wells and whatnot, electrical systems, off-grid electrical systems, and transportate, whatever it might be that might be a concern of being more independent and living off-grid. So give me a thumbs up. Usually I don't care about that stuff, and I haven't been involved in that my channel, but if you give me a thumbs up, then it won't take that many, and I'll give another talk on some subject. And I'm hopefully bringing a certain amount of entertainment and some good information. But otherwise, in the meantime, God bless, and see you on the flip side.